Alison, great to be here. We've introduced ourselves so everyone knows who we are. I think many people would be surprised that there's a trade association for not just crypto, not just a blockchain, but staking. Can you talk a little bit about the reason behind the Proof of Stake Alliance?
Yeah, sure. So the Proof of Stake Alliance was founded in 2019. So I have been talking about staking policy for some 6 years now. And the idea behind it originally, this was around the time when some of the first proof of stake chains were launching, and some of the first staking as a services businesses were starting to commercialize their offerings. And we quickly realized that in order for them to go to market effectively, we would need some sort of regulatory clarity, and on both the securities side and also on the tax side. So we came together as an industry at that time and said, let's start putting together some legal white papers, let's go down to DC, we'll meet with Congress, we'll meet with SEC, and try to put together some rules of the road for staking and some industry best practices. So we published our first set of industry best practices in 2020. We updated those in 2023. And we're still working with industry to this day, bigger and better than ever, to try to get some sensible regulation for folks involved in the staking industry and in proof-of-stake ecosystems like Solana.
Very interesting. So staking is obviously literally existential to a chain like Solana that's existed for many, many years. And I come from Marinade. We have something like 2 billion US or 10 million SOL locked up. So this is a mature thing. How soon are we going to get this figured out? Like, are we 1% of the way there from a regulatory standpoint, 99? And what's going to happen this year? It has to be guaranteed, whatever you answer, okay?
So if I'm being honest, I would say we're probably about 25% of the way there. And that's real progress based on where we were before, especially when you look at the agencies, when you look at the SEC in particular. We've had some really good faith interactions with the agency, and they've been moving very quickly. We've seen more from them on staking and engaging with the industry in the past 4 months than we have in the past 4 years, when I talk about constructive engagement. Because as everyone knows, under the previous administration, it was enforcement action after enforcement action after enforcement action, and they were trying to draw a direct line from lending to staking on the one hand, but also made this assertion that all staking services are investment contracts, which we know is not right. These are technical services, not financial services. So I say 25% of the way there because we have made some real strides, but we still don't have staking guidance, and that's something we've been pushing on for a long time. You've seen the SEC recently issued guidance on proof-of-work mining, and we as an industry, some 30 industry players, plus all of the major trades, including the Solana Policy Institute, the Digital Chamber, CCI, Blockchain Association, all came together last month and said, we need the same treatment for staking as we have for proof-of-work mining. And so I think there's constructive dialogue, and actually earlier this week, Commissioner Peirce said at SEC Speaks that she personally supports guidance on proof of stake. So we're seeing a lot of positive momentum, but until we get that clarity, we're not fully there. And by the way, that's just on the securities side, not even talking about tax.
So, you use the word investment contracts and stipulated that that's not what this is. I've got to imagine there's a lot of common misconceptions when you walk into a senator's office and say, I'm here to talk about staking. What are some of the, the big misconceptions that you find you have to alleviate in these conversations?
Yeah, well, I would say the first thing is just getting people to understand what staking is. I think we heard earlier from a number of the senators and representatives who are on stage that there are many members of Congress who are just getting up to speed on crypto. So you have to start there before you can even get into something like staking, right? So a lot of it is general education. But I think in terms of common misconceptions, it's two things, one of which I already alluded to, which is that lending and staking are the same thing. Yes, you're locking up assets, but for very different reasons, right? Like, as you said earlier, these are integral to the performance of the network. And so getting regulators to understand that, I think, is important. And I would say in terms of other misconceptions, it's that all staking is the same, right? And so we have to continuously go back and say, oh, this is native staking, this is liquid staking, this is how they're similar, this is how they're different, this is how Solana staking works, this is how staking works on other chains. So it's constant education.
Yeah, it reminds me when we were down in DC together about 6 weeks ago with the Proof of Stake Alliance, which is a very broad group of people, but I was the only Solana person in the room, and a lot of the conversation was around Ethereum and the unstake time of a week or 2 weeks, and minimum of 32 ETH. So I don't envy your challenge, because it's not just one thing when you talk about staking. There are differences between different chains. Different chains do things in different ways, and that makes the conversation complicated. So speaking of complicated, who are the variety of players involved? When we talk about a trade association, is it the Senate? Is it president, office? Who are some of the people that you get to talk about staking with?
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
So we engage on the House side, on the Senate side, in key committees. So House Financial Services, Ag, Senate Banking. We try to engage with the key folks who are involved in making legislation for the industry. But we also try to engage broadly. So you just brought up the trip that we took to DC recently. And there we met with a lot of freshman senators, just trying to get them up to speed on crypto, on staking, because when there are these crucial votes, you don't want that to be the first time they're hearing about staking or proof of stake. So we engage with Congress broadly. We're also obviously engaging at the agency level. We went in to meet with the SEC Crypto Task Force. We engage with CFTC, with folks in the administration. So here in the US, it's all of the above. And then we're also engaging with regulators internationally.
Yeah, I remember, just to have people understand the complexity of the task, because you're going into a room and you're trying to explain staking, you usually have about half an hour. And in that half an hour, you have to get something across pretty complex. And I was just noting other people waiting. There was the Concrete Association of America, I think American Dental Association. Right. So I like to think that we were the most entertaining. But the challenge, again, is in that 30 minutes, you really have to get across to people who are dealing with a lot of information. So we've been talking a lot about the US, which, given where we are with Accelerate and the administration, makes sense. But what does this look like globally in terms of staking? Are there certain regions that are further ahead or further behind, or that we can learn from?
I think that we're really starting to see a tipping point in terms of different regulatory bodies paying attention to staking and understanding they have to get this right. So we talked a little bit about what's going on in the US. I guess it was last week or the week before, the UK dropped a draft statutory instrument which involves staking as part of it. The comment period ends today, so we'll be responding to that with some suggestions. The FCA in the UK also recently dropped a discussion paper with a full section on staking, getting into the various risks, how they intend to mitigate them. So we're seeing a lot of action in the UK. Just before that, actually, Hong Kong approved staking services. So I think this is something that globally people are starting to understand that they really have to pay attention to and get right.
So, another favorite topic of mine, especially this week, is ETFs. We have the Bitcoin and ETH ETF. When the Ethereum ETF was filed on the previous administration, there was a requirement to take staking services out. So as far as I understand it, for Solana, that has to be solved first. So in the US at least, when can we expect, and what's the journey like to get a Solana staked ETF?
Yes, so as you mentioned, last year when the Ethereum ETFs were approved, I think industry, generally speaking, was happy about that, but I think many were surprised to see that these issuers were instructed to remove staking from their S1s. And we still don't really have answers as to why that was the case. But we were encouraged in December. There was actually a bipartisan group of senators led by Cynthia Lummis, who's the chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee, basically asking SEC, why not allow staking in ETFs? What is the reason? And so it was very encouraging to see Congress pay attention and to put some pressure on the agency. I think to actually answer your question in terms of realistically, what does it take to get there? One is we need to get SEC comfortable. There's that piece of it. I think we've had some productive meetings on that front. We also have to talk to Treasury and folks on the tax side to get them comfortable with it. So I think that's a part of this that some people are paying attention to, but maybe not many. But I do think we'll see it. I'm pretty bullish. I'm hopeful that we'll see a Solana ETF and a staked Solana ETF here in the U.S. I know that you recently worked with Canary Capital on that, so on filing. Yeah. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this year we'll see it.
Yeah, we're very excited. We, in partnership with Canary, filed an S1 with the SEC for Canary Marinade Solana staked ETF. So we're part of that journey too, and your organization is very helpful in helping drive our product and the industry forward. So I'm going to end with an incredibly exciting topic. I figure it's Friday afternoon before Memorial Day. So taxes. Like, why is that so complicated for staking? I mean, you would think it's pretty straightforward, but can you just break down some of the complexity around taxes and staking?
Yeah, you would think it'd be pretty straightforward. So there are many tax issues that we pay attention to, but one of the main issues that we've been paying attention to, the first time we met with Treasury about this issue was in 2019, actually, and it's about the taxation of staking rewards, and in particular the timing, right? Yep. So the question is, should these staking rewards be taxed at the time of creation or at the time of sale? And we say at the time of sale, it should be treated like all other created property. If you bake a loaf of bread, you're not taxed when it comes out of the oven, you're taxed when you sell it. So it should be the same thing for these newly created tokens that are being generated by the network. We thought that was pretty straightforward, and we think that's the case, by the way, under existing law. For a long time, IRS did not issue any guidance on the matter, and there was 2014 guidance on Bitcoin mining, but nothing on staking. And then when they finally did issue a statement, they said that staking rewards should be treated as services income, which we disagree with. So we're trying to continue to engage with them. But we've also seen positive sides from Congress. There was a standalone bill that was actually introduced last year that would clarify that both mining and staking rewards should just be taxed at the time of sale. And we just think that's fair treatment. So actively working on that issue. We've also actively been working on issues pertaining to liquid staking. So we did write the first legal analysis of liquid staking under the securities and commodities laws, but we also wrote a paper, this was in 2023, about when you go in and out of a receipt token, is that a taxable event? And actually it's not, right? So we just think people need that clarity, and we'll continue to work on the tax issues simultaneously while we work on some of these other issues.
Great. Well, Alison, thank you for all the work you and your team do, and for hopefully, I think you conveyed very well today, the type of work and expertise that's required to get product in the real world. So thank you very much, and look forward to continuing to work together.
Yeah, thank you, Hadley.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.